So last week, I would say the biggest storyline was Carson Wentz getting traded from the Colts from the Eagles to the Colts. I think if you start to look at the numbers, there's a new team that's kind of sneaking up in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. And we haven't spent a ton of time talking about them. And they are the Denver Broncos. One of the areas that I like to pay attention to is the odds markets. So you guys know I love to gamble on sports. I do a daily sports gambling television show. We're back this week. We were off last week. We'll be on at 5 o'clock Eastern today. And on that show, one of the things that I have learned to continue to pay attention to is there's a lot of hot air out there. A lot of people, and I'm part of it, a lot of people out there talking about sports on a day-to-day basis. But how much of that discussion is actually rooted in reality or likelihood? Sometimes not that much, particularly when it comes to speculation surrounding trades, surrounding draft picks, where, to be fair, a lot of executives may talk to people and they don't tell them necessarily the full truth. In other words, not only might they not say the full truth, they might lie because they're trying to gain a little bit of a competitive advantage because they want another team to think that a player is going to be available, not going to be available. Maybe you're going to take somebody else, the mock drafts, all of that discussion. There's a lot of subterfuge. There's a lot of disinformation out there when it comes to free agency and certainly in the draft. But one of the places I like to go is the odds markets for betting. Because if you're willing to put your money where your mouth is, then you will actually not only be talking about what you think is going to happen, you can open up your wallet and actually say, and not only that, I'm going to bet it's going to happen. And right before news officially leaked that Carson Wentz was headed to the Indianapolis Colts, do you know the first place I saw and I said, oh, Carson Wentz to the Colts, looks like it's almost done? Fox Bet. Fox Bet is a sports gambling website, and all of a sudden their numbers, you could bet on where Carson Wentz was going to be playing next season, and all of a sudden money came flooding in on Carson Wentz headed to the Colts, and they tweeted out, wow, Carson Wentz to the Colts is now minus 1,200, a big favorite. Within, I would say, an hour or two, Adam Schefter broke the news that Carson Wentz was headed to the Colts. Some people knew that that was happening before it actually took place, and they ran to go put money on it at Fox Bet. FanDuel. You guys know that I work with FanDuel. You can go to, for that matter, FanDuel.com/Clay. Get up to $1,000 right now. Free wager for new users, right? Whether you're in Tennessee, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Virginia, Michigan, West Virginia, Colorado, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, 10 states right now, you can go wager on where Deshaun Watson is going to play next. Get up to $1,000 free wager. I don't think you can get $1,000 down on this bet because a lot of times these prop bets, you can't get as much money down as you might want. But they're starting to move as well. In fact, Deshaun Watson is now favored to start next season with the Denver Broncos. Now, we haven't talked a lot about that. There's been a lot of talk about Deshaun Watson to the Jets, a lot of talk about Deshaun Watson to the Miami Dolphins, some talk about Deshaun Watson to the Jags, maybe in exchange for the number 1 overall pick. Bears, some Bears fans still trying to hope that maybe they could reverse the fact that they took Mitch Trubisky over Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. Been some talk about Deshaun Watson, maybe San Francisco. A lot of different rumors about where Deshaun Watson could end up. Not as much talk about Denver. But if you really think about it, Denver, other than Peyton Manning, has been kind of looking for a replacement to John Elway, much like Miami has been looking like for a replacement for Dan Marino for a long, long time now. Now, Peyton Manning came in and played quarterback at an incredibly high level. But you start running through all of the quarterbacks that John Elway brought in to hope that they were going to one day be the replacement for John Elway. And there's a lot of names on that list that make you sigh if you are a Bronco fan. Trevor Siemian. I mean, I could run through all of them, right? Dub, in fact, if you want to, Dub, you do research because we've done the list of sorrow before for Miami Dolphin fans. But, Dub, if you can find a list of all the Denver Bronco quarterbacks other than Peyton Manning, I mean, I can run through a lot of them, and I'm not a Denver Bronco expert. Brock Osweiler, Brian Griese, the Tim Tebow experience. I mean, there are just so many different guys that over the years have supposedly been the guy who was going to come in and be a replacement for John Elway, and none of them have worked. And I wonder on some level, Drew Lock obviously is the quarterback right now of the Denver Broncos, but they've actually got some decent talent at the skill positions. They went and got KJ Hamler, Jerry Jeudy. They drafted well. They got Albert O, who I think can still be a big-time playmaker at tight end sooner or later if they ever get things rolling there. They got some good, decent playmakers who are young on the offensive side of the ball. If you went and got Deshaun Watson, even if they had to give up a substantial amount for him, that could be a move that makes an awful lot of sense for them. And Dub, I think you've got the list now of the Denver Bronco quarterbacks. And again, I'm excluding Peyton Manning, who obviously came in, but that wasn't some massive find of the Denver Broncos. The gamble that John Elway made when he brought in Peyton Manning was just, hey, we believe that Peyton Manning, our doctors are telling us, is going to be able to play at a high level again. And they were right. And he obviously went to 2 Super Bowls with the Broncos, won one of them. But outside of that, it has been a factory of sadness for the Denver Broncos at the quarterback position. Since Elway retired, do you have the list, Dub? Who has played? Because the Dolphins get a lot of attention for their inability to replace Dan Marino over a quarter century. But if Peyton Manning hadn't decided to come to Denver, the Broncos kind of see much less attention paid to it, but kind of have their own version of futility as well. Who are those quarterbacks?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You mentioned Brian Griese, Chris Miller, Gus Frerotte, Steve Beuerlein, Jake Plummer.
Beuerlein, I think. Yeah,
Jake
Beuerlein
Plummer.
would be the I forgot about Jake Plummer.
Our good friend Danny Cannell, 2 starts. Jarius Jackson, Jay Cutler, the Jay Cutler era in Denver. Kyle Orton, Chris Sims, Tim Tebow, and then Peyton Manning.
All right. Of all of those quarterbacks, Peyton Manning, I'm taking out of the equation. People are like, Peyton Manning, Jay Cutler? If you had to pick, run through that list one more time, and let's pretend that you had to pick a quarterback to put $1 million on to be the starting quarterback for the Denver Broncos to win a game, and you got him at his absolute apex, the best that he could have been when he was in Denver. Run through that list again. I'm thinking that I probably go with Jay Cutler as my guy, and that's no knock on Jay Cutler, but I don't feel that confident that I would win my $1 million. Let's listen to that list one more time.
Yeah, Brian Griese, Gus Frerotte, Steve Beuerlein, Jake Plummer, Danny Cannell, Jarius Jackson, Kyle Orton, Chris Sims, Tim Tebow, and then post Peyton Manning, you got Brock Osweiler, Trevor Siemian, Paxton Lynch, and Case Keenum, and then the rookie this year or last year, what's his name?
Drew Lock.
Drew Lock.
That is a factory of sadness at the quarterback position. Do you agree with me that of all of those guys, that Jay Cutler could be the best choice? If you had to put $1 million on a game and you could only have one of those Bronco quarterbacks, leaving aside Peyton Manning, who would you take?
It's got to be Cuddy. I mean, it has to be. You're not taking
I think
Jake Plummer. Jake Plummer was a decent player, but
yeah,
I think you got to go
with
Cutler.
What I'm saying there is there's not very many good options.
That's
and so
correct.
the reason why I'm bringing that up with the Denver Broncos is the more I sat and thought about it, the more I can see the organization saying, let's stop trying to draft a quarterback, given the fact that we basically spent 20 years proving that we have no idea what we're doing in the draft when it comes to finding somebody to replace John Elway. Why don't we just go get a guy that we know is already really good? And even if we have to give up multiple first-round picks for him, guess what? We've spent multiple first-round picks on quarterbacks that have not panned out. Why not give up 3 first-round picks if we know we're going to have a quarterback who's a stud for the next decade? That ultimately is not a bad choice. And so the more I sit around and I think about it, the more I can see Deshaun Watson to the Denver Broncos making a lot of sense. Because I think in order to go give that many first-round picks, and let's presume they're going to have to give up 3 or so, in order to give up that many first-round picks, you have to have a trail of futility behind you when it comes to all of the other quarterbacks that you have gone out and drafted. The Brock Osweilers of the world, the Paxton Lynches of the world, the Jake Plumbers, the Jay Cutlers, all of them stacked up one after the other. And now you're on to Drew Lock. And I don't know about you, but I didn't feel like what I've seen from Drew Lock this year. He finished off the previous season and showed some flashes of excitement. I don't know if I am a Denver Bronco fan that I have seen enough to think, oh, Drew Lock is the future of this franchise. Doesn't mean that Drew Lock can't improve. Doesn't mean in year 3 that he can't be a lot better. But Denver is a fabulous football town. That city is in love with the Broncos. John Elway is still the hero of all heroes in Denver. But they've got a little bit of a Dan Marino factor at play there, where they just can't quite find a way to get a replacement. And again, Peyton Manning came in, but you start thinking about all the first-round quarterbacks, the Tim Tebows, the Jay Cutlers, Paxton Lynch, I think was a first-rounder, the Brock Osweilers, and then you've got sitting out there Drew Lock, who's your most recent second-round pick, and none of those guys have panned out. I just ran through like basically 5 first-round picks, 5 or 6 of them, all of whom have failed. If you're failing with all those first-round picks, is it really a bad play to give up 3 first-rounders for a guy you know is 100% going to win and win at a high level? I don't think that's a bad move at all. In fact, the more I looked at the odds markets and saw that money was coming in on Deshaun Watson, the more it made sense to me for that exact reason, because the more failure you've had at the quarterback position, the less you have to trust your ability to evaluate that position. And this, by the way, is one of the ultimate signs of how difficult it is to evaluate the quarterback position. John Elway, who is one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game, isn't even able to watch film and figure out who the next good quarterback is, even after all the opportunities that he's had to figure the next guy out. And partly you can say, well, that's what happens a lot, right? The Michael Jordans, the John Elways, those guys don't necessarily do the best job of talent evaluation because they're so good that what drove them to become excellent athletes doesn't necessarily translate to being an executive. Sometimes it's the guys who are great coaches. In fact, oftentimes it's the guys who are great coaches who had to learn how to play on the edges, who had to find every little trick that they could in order to have a career in the game at all. It's those guys, those tinkerers, those guys who are on the margins that oftentimes end up better executives or better coaches because they've had to figure out what works without having the incredible talent of an Elway, for instance, or of a Jordan. And so I actually think it makes a lot of sense, Deshaun Watson to the Broncos. He's favored right now to start the season in 2021 with the Broncos from an odds maker gambling perspective. Now, the number hasn't broken in a massive favorite way like we saw happen with Carson Wentz, but it is interesting that the Broncos have moved into the favorite spot as it pertains to the most likely team to end up with Deshaun Watson services in 2021. I continue to believe, by the way, that the most likely outcome is the Texans are going to come to their senses and do whatever they have to keep Deshaun Watson. But if they're going to let him go, and I'm the Denver Broncos, I'll give you 3 first-round picks for Deshaun Watson right now. And one reason I'd give you those picks is I don't think I'm going to end up in a situation where you're getting a top 5 pick like we're getting from the Miami Dolphins right now. I'm telling you, I would give up 3 first-round picks if I were the Denver Broncos right now, just because what they've shown at the quarterback position is they've spent 6 first-round picks basically on quarterbacks since John Elway left, and it still hasn't worked out for them. Why not give up 3 and 100% know that you've got a stud? That's what I do.